Hello everyone! In this video I will be translating and summarizing the latest Urdu broadcast by Shahbaz Gill to make it accessible for our English-speaking audience. Let us go through the key developments and insights in Shahbaz Gill's words. Where earlier there was ongoing war, now a ceasefire has been declared. In other words, the fighting has stopped. But even as it was ending, Iran launched a final set of surprising attacks that shocked everyone. All four parties have now either directly or indirectly announced a ceasefire. The first announcement came from President Trump, and clearly Qatar was involved. The second party, or perhaps one should say mediator, was also effectively a party to the conflict, because it too was attacked. Israel, of course, was also on board once President Trump made his announcement. Initially, Iran gave no official statement on the matter. But now we have confirmation that Iran has officially recognized the ceasefire. From the news, you must have gathered by now that President Trump had posted a tweet on his social media, which we also showed you last week while covering the story. But at that time, it was not clear how seriously that post would be acted upon, whether Iran or Israel would come on board or not. Apart from that social media post, we had no further information. Now we have received more information. The post by Trump, where he declared the final ceasefire and even outlined the schedule, such as how many hours later the ceasefire would begin, who would cease fire first, and how the process would be made effective, is now confirmed. Let us go into the background of how the ceasefire was brokered and what exactly happened. First, remember that the conflict lasted 11 days. President Trump referred to it as 12 days, but effectively it was 11. As far as Israel's losses are concerned, they suffered 31 fatalities and over 1,300 injuries. Around 18 of those were critically injured. The financial damage in Israel is also considerable, estimated at a minimum of $1 billion due to damage to buildings, possibly even more. For the first time, Iranian missiles were able to effectively breach all intermediate defenses, including US and Israeli defense systems stationed in Jordan, Iraq and other areas. Iranian missiles successfully hit Israeli territory, bypassing Israel's famed Iron Dome and other air defense systems. They hit strategic targets like Israel's general headquarters, a technology lab involved in drone development, a major power grid station, and several other important buildings. The effectiveness of Iranian missiles was truly tested, and perhaps Israel was not expecting such a level of accuracy or impact. This caused panic among the Israeli population. Thousands of citizens fled overnight once the missile strikes began. Airports were overcrowded as Israeli citizens tried to leave the country. One major reason for this is that many Israelis hold dual or multiple citizenships. Remember, Israel was established by bringing in people from all over the world, and they were granted citizenship based on historical ties to the land. Even if some did not retain their original nationality, their children often reclaimed it later. So a large percentage of Israeli citizens hold passports from other countries, while in places like Pakistan or India, this percentage might be around 5%. In Israel, it could be 40 to 50%, possibly more. So many citizens left the country amid the conflict. The people had not expected the war to reach their own homes. For them, the conflict was always something happening in Gaza or elsewhere, like a video game. They were shocked when missiles actually landed in their cities. In the final days, there were instances where missiles landed in Haifa without any sirens being triggered, and the missile defense system failed to detect them. People were forced to live in underground shelters and were severely distressed. They definitely did not want the war to continue. Over 400 citizens filed insurance or government claims for damages to cars, homes, or lost work. Now let us discuss how the ceasefire came about. President Trump requested the Emir of Qatar to intervene. The Emir of Qatar then engaged with both Iran and Israel through diplomatic channels, including a special envoy named Steve. Likely, Steve G. Qatar first spoke to Iran, then to Israel. The US was already in communication with Israel. Now, my analysis, this is not a confirmed report, just my opinion, is that part of the ceasefire deal included Iran launching symbolic missile attacks on US bases. These attacks were likely choreographed or symbolic because no real damage occurred, and Trump even seemed to welcome them. Think about it. How could Iran attack a US base and the US welcome it? It seemed more like a love letter than an attack. Again, this is just my personal analysis. When Iran negotiated the deal with Qatar, they may have demanded the right to retaliate for attacks on their nuclear facilities. Hence, they fired 19 missiles, 18 of which were intercepted, and one fell harmlessly in a desert area. Interestingly, these missiles were fired at a base in Qatar, the very mediator of the ceasefire, even though the US has bases in Iraq, Jordan, and at sea. This suggests the attack may have been staged or symbolically aimed as part of the deal. To seal the deal, Iran launched these final missiles. But Iran did one more surprising thing. Just before the ceasefire deadline, they calculated the exact launch time so that the missiles would land just before the ceasefire went into effect, leaving Israel with no time to retaliate. Right before their ceasefire window began, Iran fired 11 additional ballistic missiles at Israel. These were a major surprise. Israel was not expecting them. The strikes killed 5 people and injured many more. As soon as the missiles landed, the ceasefire officially started, preventing any immediate response from either side. Iran only officially recognized the ceasefire after launching these final missiles. Prior to that, they had not issued any statement acknowledging an agreement. These 11 missiles reportedly landed in Beersheba, a city in Israel, assuming I'm pronouncing it correctly. So this is the complete background of how Qatar mediated and how the ceasefire came about. President Trump has since issued a final statement urging all parties not to violate the ceasefire, warning that violations would have consequences, and requesting that the ceasefire be prolonged or maintained. Now it is up to history to decide who won or lost. A few more details. A senior advisor to Iran's Revolutionary Guard stated that their nuclear facilities were not destroyed, contrary to claims. The Fordow site, for example, is still intact with only minor damage. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi earlier said that if Israel stopped attacking by 4 o'clock in the morning, Iran would not retaliate. But at that time, no formal agreement had been made. After launching their final missiles, Iran then acknowledged the agreement. One more significant point. A US official mentioned that they do not know where Iran has hidden its enriched uranium. Whether it is 400 kilograms or 5,500 kilograms, 60% enriched. Iran, of course, acknowledges that it has uranium, but no radioactive leaks were detected, suggesting Iran may have moved its stockpiles before the attacks on nuclear sites. Oil prices, which had surged during the conflict, have now dropped significantly. Previously, Iran had threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz, and 3 major oil tankers attempting to pass through the strait had turned back. Now, with the ceasefire in place, the strait will not be closed and the ships will resume passage. Lastly, airline activity is returning to normal. Qatar Airways, which had suspended all flights, is now restoring operations. Other airlines such as Emirates, Etihad, and even Pakistan International Airlines have resumed flights. Turkish Airlines has also followed suit. All the airlines in these countries, including Saudi Air, had cancelled their flights, but now those flights have been restored. As I speak to you, major restoration has taken place. Of course, some flights or countries may take a little more time to fully restore, but at this point, most of the airspace has been reopened and flights are operating as usual. In Qatar, things are mostly back to normal, except for some crowding at the airport due to the backlog of cancelled flights which they are managing. Flights are coming and going without any major issues. Now moving on, we have covered the airspace situation, how the mediation happened, the ceasefire that took place, and even Iran's final strikes. I concluded earlier that who won or lost will ultimately be judged by history. But Iran has clearly gained breathing space, because on one side was the entire world, and on the other was Iran alone. In my opinion, this ceasefire greatly benefited Iran. It is a win-win for them. They did not suffer a humiliating defeat, nor did they simply surrender. Given that they lag in technology and do not possess nuclear power, Iran still managed to walk away with advantages. We, on the other hand, embarrassed ourselves unnecessarily. For example, we nominated someone for a Nobel Peace Prize right at the moment when the US was about to launch an attack. Had we waited until just after the ceasefire, maybe people would not have been injured. Maybe people would not have reacted so emotionally. But we rushed the nomination, and then the US went ahead and attacked. The reception that was to be held for our field marshal was ruined. It was a major miscalculation on our part. But then again, there is always a higher plan, God's plan. A human may act, but ultimately it is God's will that prevails. Often only later does a person realize what actually happened through him. Now to the next big news. In Gujranwala, there has been a major development. Defense Housing Authority Gujranwala has occupied land in the Badoki area. They have used force against villagers and seized land at the Deputy Commissioner's rate, land which is now being protested over. As you may have noticed, Defense Housing Authority seems to grow everywhere, like it has been given steroids. Even a specially farmed mango tree would not flourish as fast. Why? because we do not follow basic economic principles like the rest of the world. When Defence Housing Authority decides to expand, be it in Lahore, Gujranwala or Bahawalpur, they begin by purchasing a small piece of land. Once it is publicly known that Defence Housing Authority is coming, people start valuing their land like gold. A piece of land that was once worth 1 lakh rupees per acre now commands 1 or 2 crores. And they have every right to demand that, because in a free market, a product is worth whatever the seller thinks it is worth. Now here is what actually happens. People refuse to sell. And since Defence Housing Authority is a military-affiliated institution or its offshoot, it does not directly engage in beatings or abductions that would tarnish their image. So they use a very innovative method. They employ local thugs, masked under the names of registered consultancy companies that are supposedly offering land procurement services. These are the same area goons, just under corporate names. Defence Housing Authority contracts them to clear the village. These middlemen make a deal with Defence Housing Authority to buy, say, 100 acres for 300 crores. Defence Housing Authority gives them 100 crores. Then these guys negotiate with villagers, keeping half the money for themselves and giving the rest to the villagers. Most villagers need money and leave. A few who resist are then harassed, sometimes even killed. This has happened not just with Defence Housing Authority, but also with other major housing societies. When someone refuses to sell their remaining 10 acres and Defence Housing Authority needs the full 100, they are forcibly evicted, even murdered. Defence Housing Authority does not do this directly. Their consultants, thugs in suits, handle it. This would be criminal activity anywhere else in the world. But in Pakistan, it is masked in a polished manner. And this is how Defence Housing Authority and other big real estate players keep expanding. Sadly, this same method has been used in Defence Housing Authority Gujranwala, where people are now protesting. But who is going to listen? The government of Punjab is not going to pay them any attention in the current circumstances. All we can do is pray for them. Now on to the next news item. The budget in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has been passed. I already gave you the full details in the last vlog. There's no point repeating it. My position was clear. The budget should not have been passed without consulting Imran Khan. Social media workers are rightly criticizing this. I agree with their criticism. Once Imran Khan's sisters had tweeted their opposition, and Khan Sahib had clearly told Ali Amin Gandapur not to proceed, and even the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa speaker had stated clearly that they would not pass the budget without Khan's say-so, then passing the budget made no sense. Despite this, the budget was passed, a deeply regrettable move. When I found out this was happening, I sent a full plan to party leadership. I was not attending political committee meetings at the time, but I told them either delay the budget or make it an emergency 15-day budget, but do not pass it without consulting Khan Sahib. Others, like Aliya Hamza, also raised their voices. Salman Akram Raja promised there would be another meeting before a final decision. But from what I have heard, even he did not know the budget would be passed secretly on the 23rd. Now the excuses are pouring in. Oh, it was a supplementary budget, etc. But that is irrelevant. Khan Sahib will now respond himself. This should never have happened, but it has, and now it is up to him to address it. The next news item is about Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. He said that the Field Marshal had won the war against India, which is why Trump hosted him. But we all know by now that the meeting was purely related to Iran. Nothing else was discussed. The US did not know how long the war would last. There are many details I will not go into, especially since Iran is a brotherly Islamic nation and now is not the time to publicly criticize them. But Bilawal's comments hold no truth. Everyone knows what really happened. The Pakistan People's Party had earlier claimed they would not vote on the federal budget and even issued strong warnings, but as I told you then, they would vote anyway. And that is exactly what happened. This always happens. Budget season is when politicians negotiate their demands, extract funds, even engage in blackmail to push their agendas. It is their season to milk the system. Now Pakistan People's Party has announced it will vote on the budget. That is that. Finally, the last news item. Donald Trump has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by Pakistan's Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar, Nawaz Sharif's son-in-law and unofficial Deputy Prime Minister, a title which does not exist constitutionally in Pakistan. This report is from journalist Asad Tour. The government itself cannot make such nominations, so Dar submitted it as a senator, signing the nomination himself. Now, how Iran must feel about this, I leave to your imagination. Before I sign off, remember, we have also made an English documentary on the background of this ceasefire, how it happened, who brokered it, and whether it will last. Did Iran win? Did the US or Israel win? We cover all this in the documentary. The link is available. Also, please make sure to join our WhatsApp channel so we can communicate directly with you. If you have not joined yet, the link is on the screen. Do join. That wraps up our translation of Shahbaz Gill's video. I hope this English version helped you understand his message better. Please like, share and subscribe to Awami Lens to help our community grow. Do not forget to leave a comment below and let me know what you thought of this effort.